If you're a defense contractor or a service provider to defense contractors, this session was put on specifically for you. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. My name is Greg Tomczyk, CEO here at Valor Cybersecurity. And over the past about 6 years since Katie Arrington came out and put the CMMC flag in the ground, we've been helping defense contractors navigate what is known as CMMC, but really any defense cybersecurity requirement that has popped up since that time frame. And our team has a lot of other experience in other frameworks, but we decided when we started Valor in 2021 to be specifically focused on defense contractors and the problems that they face. And one of those biggest problems that we talk about almost each and every week on this platform, but really every day with the folks that we serve, is CMMC. So in 2019, CMMC became an ecosystem. DFARS 7012 was already in place in 2017. DFARS 7019 came into play in 2019. So those numbers can kind of confuse you a little, but that was the self-assessment and SPRS scoring requirement that came into play. And then 2021, things have kind of evolving where they want to get people from self-assessment to be able to prove that to an outside party coming in to assess, which is a C3PAO, who are regulated by the CMMC accreditation body. Look at your contracts. What are the requirements? How do we meet those requirements and save time and money in that process? And then leverage every dollar, every hour we've spent on this implementation to prove to a prime contractor or to a contracting officer or representative of the Department of Defense, we're doing what you said you want us to do. So that's critical. But after the rule is published, if it ever gets published, there will be a 1-year period where you have to kind of make sure your self-assessment is in order. And then the rollout, at least anticipated time frame, is then certification audits will come into contracts as a condition of award. What a lot of people don't realize, and we've seen this really hit people hard, is that DFARS 7012, which has been in since 2017, and in 2019 when the SPRS score requirement came into play, it can still be a condition of award. The Department of Defense has said we don't want contracting officers using these requirements as a no or go or no go, where if somebody doesn't have 100%, 110 SPRS score, they can't get a contract. But as we know, when people are looking at the risk of doing business with somebody, if you have one person that has 100 SPRS score, maybe they're closer to the end zone per se, and then you have somebody who's a negative 10, and they have the same exact proposal, because a lot of companies are using AI models and they're using these things to try to get competitive advantages. Maybe the proposals look exactly the same, and you're working on your CMMC, but you're a little bit behind the curve because you doubt these requirements really mean anything at the end of the day. They're going to choose the one with 100, whether you think or like it or not. And we've seen that time again where the contracting officer doesn't say we've chosen this company because their reputation and their cybersecurity is more in line with what they want to see, but it does happen. And that is just how business works. As we all know, people calculate risk, and if you are not doing the requirement that you're supposed to be doing, those requirements will be held against you and you will lose contracts. And that's not fear mongering or a threat. We just have seen it happen both on that side as well as on the other side, when a company has really spent the time and money to get these requirements in place and then go the extra step to actually prove it, to have the SPRS score in there, to have a clear SSP that they can submit either with their contracts or a letter that supports that system security plan at the end of the day. So as that year one rolls out, you should have already done your self-assessment up to this point. But what I would say is the three biggest things, and that's what we're going to discuss today, that companies are struggling with to accelerate their CMMC readiness. We've seen companies have nothing in place and companies have more than they need to have in place. And we really try to get people to that stance of, I have confidence in it. I know where I need to spend dollars and maintain things in the future. So first and foremost, the biggest obstacle companies face today is something called scoping, defining your CMMC boundary. And we put a video up a few weeks ago called Define Your CMMC Boundary. And this is one of the hardest things for companies to do, is to scope the applicability of where CMMC or where CUI and where FCI is that a CMMC auditor is going to come in and look at. So definitely go ahead and check that video out. We're going to make sure it's in the show notes, whether on YouTube or on LinkedIn, so that you can go ahead and check that video out. If you don't have that, they're going to come in and assess your entire business and really not really give you probably the credit that you deserve, because you don't have a clear scope of how you've applied these controls. And we see that costs a lot of companies money when they just really have trouble scoping where CUI is and where FCI is so that they can apply these controls in a clear way. And that causes, when you don't do that, you either overspend or way underspend. And that is going to make your SPRS score inaccurate because you feel like you applied it one way, but ultimately when a C3PAO or the DoD comes in and does a SPRS score, during an audit or during some type of data breach. So definitely accurate scoping is the biggest obstacle we see companies face. We actually recently came out with our CMMC readiness report, which actually walks you through how we've seen companies accurately scope on their own with our support from the outside, but without us doing it for them, to be able to train up one of their experts to be able to do it. And that is also going to be in this video for you to check out. So the second piece that a lot of companies struggle with is, as I mentioned, accurate SPRS scoring. This is going to be the biggest landmine in the CMMC ecosystem. We've had companies since 2019 submit SPRS scores to say we're 100% compliant or we're 50% compliant. And what the narrative of that, say it was 2019, you said we're 100% compliant, so 110 SPRS score. And then once all the rulemaking started, you started to get a deeper look into what you're doing and what you're not doing. So what we've done is we've put together a video, and it's called Top Reasons Contractors Fail Certification Audits. And this is one of the main ones, is the SPRS scoring process and the self-assessment process is the time is not taken, the effort is not taken to do it the right way. We've laid out what that SPRS score process should look like and what the self-assessment process should look like. So you self-assess, and as you're going through that self-assessment, you're putting the specific values of those requirements. You're either saying yes, implemented, or not implemented, and you're giving yourself the score of those ones that were implemented and not giving yourself the score of the ones that were not implemented, and those become POAM items. So you really have to have a point person for your self-assessing and your SPRS scoring, whether that's internal or external. But accurate SPRS scoring is really the main requirement that we see companies not meeting currently, and that's going to set you up for failure now and in the future, because it's telling what we call an audit narrative. It's telling a untrustworthy audit narrative, and that's extremely scary from our perspective as a readiness partner. If we come in and we have to tell the board, your team's been lying to the Department of Defense for this amount of time, you have this amount of risk of false claims. Obviously, we're going to get you on the right track now, but we can't solve what you did in the past. The last piece of the puzzle that a lot of companies struggle with is the documentation component. There are tools out there like Bonta, Drata, FutureFeed, a lot of other tools that companies go to just to get the template documents from these systems. Obviously, evidence gathering is huge. Documentation is a piece of evidence gathering, and these tools do a great job of gathering evidence. They can link into your email service, link into your endpoint detection system, your SOC as a service, for example, your security operations center. They can link into all your tools to gather evidence and then be able to put them into some type of folder that will make it auditable later. And that there's a lot of benefit to that evidence gathering. These systems, these GRC systems, their documentation is not great. And most of them, when you get below the surface, they will say documentation is the entry point, because that's what a lot of companies struggle and don't have the expertise to do. So a lot of companies don't have the expertise to develop the documentation and prioritize the technical implementation. And that is why we exist ultimately as a company, and why other readiness partners exist, is they can help you prioritize technical implementation of those, I'd say about 60 odd controls, 60, 70 controls, and then the expertise to develop the documentation to prove it at the end of the day. As I've mentioned multiple times, just as I mentioned, the scoping exercise, it's going to walk you through how to go through SPRS scoring. And ultimately, it's going to help you accelerate your readiness because you have all the information you need to scope successfully, avoid those costly mistakes. And then one of the videos we have in there is how to turn compliance into a competitive advantage, which is why we exist as a company. We feel that cybersecurity is one of the biggest competitive advantages that companies can have in any supply chain, any business ecosystem. We would love for you to enroll in that course. Maybe you only watch one video. There's 10 videos that walk you through the entire CMMC readiness process and the biggest lessons we've learned from working with more than 50 companies, from either starting or only with a few things in place all the way through to CMMC readiness. And we want to offer that to you as a part of tuning in today. And for the months to come, we're going to keep this course posted. We would love for you to be be in that ecosystem to benefit from it, whether you have a technical partner or you have somebody on your team that can become an expert in CMMC. This course will train you as an executive or them up to be able to get you guys in a better position to make the right decisions, the ones that are going to benefit you now and in the future, and then ultimately turning it into a competitive advantage to win more contracts. We want to see businesses that are doing things the right way really win in this ecosystem, and that's really what we look at as the big benefit, but also saving time and money in the implementation process of what you already have to put in place. DFARS 7012 is in all of your contracts, and if you don't have those in place, you're currently out of compliance. And we want to see companies continue to grow in the Department of Defense, continue to serve the national security mission, and that's why we exist as a company here at Valor. So feel free to reach out with any questions. We'll make sure those videos that I mentioned are linked. We would love for you to check out our free CMMC readiness course to benefit you and your team going forward. Until next time, my name is Greg Tomczyk. Stay safe, stay secure.